Hello, my name's Kate Nicholas. Today is March the 22nd, 2013, and it's exactly a year ago today that my beautiful mother passed away. And it's taken me a year to feel able to do this, but I want to share her story. It's a story about dying, but it's also a story about living. And it was a gift she left us at the very end of her life. I like to think of it as a final report from the edge by a pioneering journalist. This is a photograph of my mother that I found, taken when she was at the very height of her fame in Fleet Street. She was known then as Maggie Pycroft and became known as Margaret Nicholas when she married my father, Daniel. And she had an amazing life. She was so gutsy, she was beautiful, she was inspiring. It's because of her I went into journalism. And she travelled all over the world. She was out in the Middle East. She covered a lot of major events such as the Munich air disaster. She interviewed heads of state such as Golda Meir. She also went on to write best-selling books. So she had this incredible life. She had this insatiable curiosity. And even when she was disabled later on in life by arthritis and her health was failing her, she had such a bright mind. She was full of humour and optimism. And she was a lifelong Baptist, my mother, but she was always full of questions to which she often didn't have answers. And after she died, I actually found a lot of books in the house about faith, about Christianity. And obviously she'd really been seeking all the time, which made what happened at the very end of her life even more amazing, a real gift. Now, my mum went into hospital at the beginning of March last year, and ever the optimist, she was convinced she was coming home. But her body was slowly shutting down now. She was 82 years old. And we got a call on March the 19th it was. I got a call to say that she stopped breathing and could she go onto a ventilator. Now, I wanted to see her again, so I said yes. But when I got there, I rather regretted having done so because as feisty as ever, she was busy fighting with the nurses. She was really quite out of it and obviously hated this machine that she was being very rude about, actually. And she kept telling people that she didn't want to be on there. And over the next 48 hours, we fought a battle with the medical establishment, my sister and I. I think we were up against their professional pride. They were determined to keep her on the machine, even though they said she couldn't recover. And eventually it was a lovely Muslim doctor who accepted what we said, that we knew she had enough faith that she knew that she had somewhere to go. And he said, she's got to go on another phase of the journey. And he actually took her off the machine. I'm so profoundly grateful to him because we then had several hours where she recovered all her lucidity. She was able to talk to friends and to family, and she was able to say everything she wanted to us, and we were able to say everything we wanted to her. And it was amazing. We were all talking away. And at one point, while we were talking, she sort of said, heads, putting her hand out like this, saying, out the way, heads. And she was looking at something beyond us. And she started saying, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, it's absolutely wonderful. It's wonderful. And she was looking at something, some place, and said, oh, it's joyous. And then she carried on talking to us. And then about half an hour later, her face was wreathed in smiles. And she said, Ma, oh, Ma, her mother. She seemed to be seeing her mother. And then a bit later on, very movingly, she said, oh, Dan, my father. And this will stay with me until the day I die. She then said, Jesus? Jesus? Is that really you? And she then said, yes, Jesus, I'm coming. And she carried on. It seems as if she was talking to him and she was nodding her head like this, as if she was listening. And she said a couple of times in a clear voice, she said, thank you, Lord, for a wonderful life. Thank you, Lord, for a peaceful death. As if she was talking to him, thanking him. And then she started talking about yo-yos. This one confounded us slightly. She kept saying yo-yo. And we didn't know what she meant, the child's toy that goes up and down like this. And it took us a while to realise that what she was actually saying was that she was moving backwards and forwards, in and out of some other space. And so eventually my sister and I said to her, it's okay, you can go. And she turned to us and said, this is a journey we must all go on. Over a period of time, she became far less able to speak. Her breathing became very shallow. And I remember very near the end, close to when she was losing consciousness, she asked for a Bible and we gave her the Gideon Bible. She clutched to her and she actually had a cross that I'd bought her. It was an olive tree from Bethlehem, a cross, one of the olive tree from Bethlehem crosses. She was clutching this. And one of the very last statements she made, in this clear, emphatic voice, she could hardly breathe, she just said, "Richard Dawkins was wrong. There is a God." She passed away a couple of hours after that, very peacefully. Friends and family who'd been gathered around the bed all left. And she passed away actually in mine and my sister's arms. And after this, I did a lot of research because I wanted to know more about this experience she'd had. And I found that actually these kind of visions were quite common in the past. Up until the end of the 19th century, family and friends and community would gather around the bed of the dying person looking for this evidence of entry into heaven. And there's a great book by, I think it's editor at large of Christianity Today, a guy called Rob Moll, called The Art of Dying. And in that he actually records newspaper obituaries from Victorian times, which recorded the way these experiences, people articulating these experiences. I think the problem is so often today, people are either sedated or hooked up to machines like this ventilator, that even if they're having these experiences, that they can't articulate them. But it felt at that time as if somehow the veil had been drawn back and we'd been granted a vision, granted the ability to see something beyond. And I believe it's no coincidence that my mother, who was a born storyteller, told others stories all her lives, was able to actually articulate what was happening to her. And I also think it was no coincidence that another journalist, myself, sitting in the room listening to this along with others. And I believe that this story was meant to be shared. It's taken me a year to be able to do this and do this recording without blubbing, but I do believe this was meant to be shared. Immediately after she died, I found myself sitting again and again in front of people who were either facing uncertainty and death themselves or had lost somebody recently. And it was as if God said, "Okay, here you are, I'm pressing the play button now, tell them." And I was amazed by how much comfort people got from this. So I'm giving you this story now. And if you think there's anyone else who is facing uncertainty, the pain of uncertainty and death, always grieving, please feel free to share it with them. I know that my mother would have wanted that. So thank you for listening.